I'll just piece it together later. Sorry about that.
Yeah, whatever.
Um,
No big deal.
okay. Let's see here. So, okay, so people let us know. Sorry about that. As I said earlier, I'm on my laptop. I'm not on my normal computer. I just am not at my normal recording position at the moment. So, let us know if you can hear everything okay. Um, Now, where were we before we got cut off? Oh yeah, we were talking about the media. So the media, I feel, well, a combination of the media and you have the media, you have the courts, just in general, the liberals in the kind of establishment are so hysterical or so crazy or so over the top that it's basically either you side with the president or you side against him, and there's not really anyone kind of in between that you can use to kind of bounce ideas off of. You know what I mean? Or people who might have another perspective.
Yeah, my brother was talking to me about this today. How the center is basically disappearing and people are ending up either on one side or the other. I think we basically play into that um, and try to resolve this conflict as fast as possible by removing the sort of I'm looking at this little map you have up on screen right now, and it's almost like there's this buffer stopping the two sides from actually coming into conflict and resolving it. And we need to figure out what the path for the country is. um and I think once everyone decides which side they're on, then we can fight it out. And I think it's pretty clear that the Trump side is going to win, if he actually pursues this all the way to the end. I think he has the path there, and even beyond that, we have the path through him, hopefully, to continue the fight against the internationalists over the next couple of years, if we can muster the will. So,
Right, just 1 second. Someone had sent me a super chat before it crashed. Okay, so Jedi Knight Anakin Cringewalker says, "Only way to test truth is to push it. After all, while the dead might be able to vote, they cannot fight. If no one shows up to fight, we're proven right. Their truth regime can't raise the dead." So, what
yeah, well,
is?
I mean,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
he's just saying, he's saying, like, if we don't show up to fight, um, we can't win, and if we show up to fight and they're not and they don't, we will also win. And I basically think that's kind of what's going to happen. I think most of the blue side, the leftist side, they're not going to come out and actually defend Biden in any way. I mean, I think most of them are just inactive, and this is really a war between elites that's happening right now. And
You mean
yeah, I
between the
mean,
elites and the people, more or less?
yeah, and then this is actually, I mean, what's happening right now is kind of how republics restore or destroy themselves, right? Is like you have this thing where aristocracies, aristocratic republics even tend to degenerate into demagoguery, and basically the masses are used as a political tool by ambitious politicians, and this degenerates, right? But what ultimately ends up happening, it seems, is that some sort of populist figure will actually use the masses in a restorationist manner against the elites, right? Um, so it is elite versus elite all the way down. Um, but at the end of the process, which we may be, in this weird way, through the very means that degenerated the system, you can actually restore it in some capacity if you have the leader who's willing to do it, and he's successful. I think that's what we're seeing now, which is why I'm willing to engage in, this sort of, uh, losing the word for it, but just this low level, like, democratic, um, just American style politics. And even though it's not some sort of based reactionary political order that Trump is pushing, it's populism. I mean, that's how you break the existing aristocracy. Is you need a guy to use that power um as a bludgeon for the republic and not just for his own personal ambition. And yeah, I think Trump really does want to save the republic. I think that's how he sees what he is doing. Um, I think he is very pro-American in that sense, and I think it would be a good thing if he did save the republic because, like I said, we're the republic is about to be replaced with internationalist, new world order, and I'll take the American Republic over that. Um,
Well, you
and
live
from
here.
there, yeah, exactly. It's like a lot of us have perspectives outside of the U.S., but you're close by, and your country's going to hell in a handbasket too. And I look at what's happening in the UK and Australia and Europe, and I don't want to live like that. I mean, they're imprisoned in their houses, and it's only going to get worse. And it is getting worse. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to sit here and do nothing while these people take over? I mean, it's like there's really no options. I think the lack of options is actually a good thing for us because, like I said, it eradicates the center and forces people to pick a side. And I think people will tacitly support at least some sort of American restorationist movement, which Trump is leading, over the internationalists, because they're just out to make everyone miserable. And I think they really overplayed their hands with these lockdowns.
Do you think it helped or hurt him more?
I think I think the coronavirus ended up helping Trump. And I mean, this is what I said before the election: is I actually thought he was going to win because he's clearly not the pro lockdown candidate, and Biden is. And I don't think support for the lockdowns is increasing in the United States. I mean, it depends on the person, right? But I think the economic damage from the lockdowns probably motivated more people to go out and vote for Trump than people who voted for Biden. But I could be wrong. That's kind of just a hunch from gauging how people sort of silently feel. I guess it's like the silent Trump supporter thing. I mean, if you actually talk to a lot of people, I find they just kind of go along with wearing the mask and everything, but they actually think it's really stupid. Um, and I think most people at this point in the U.S. probably know someone whose small business has been damaged or closed forever because of the coronavirus. So it's hard for me to see how that wouldn't generate more support for Trump.
I
In that
mean, there
case.
is that though. Although I don't know if we would have had the same mail-in ballot shenanigans. I mean, I guess the
Well,
question is, would they have been able to steal the election without the switch to mail-in ballots?
yeah. So I think no, and I think yeah, that's actually a really interesting point. I think in that sense, the virus hurt Trump in that it provided the justification for this mail-in fraud, and so in that sense, we kind of ended up here because they were able to use these mail-in ballots, which everyone knew what was going to happen, right? Like what has happened is exactly what people predicted would happen in the result of mail-in elections, even from the left, right? So we knew this was coming, and it happened. And yes, it was enabled by the coronavirus. So in that sense, um, I think that was really the whole point all along. In some sense, I mean, there's definitely other motivations in the lockdown, but in the U.S. case, it's pretty clear that um, the mail-in scheme was one of the main reasons to keep perpetuating these lockdowns. Um, I wouldn't even be surprised if they enforced these lockdowns in the whole Western world purely to cheat in this election, because the United States, is obviously a very important center of power for global homo, right? So I think they would be willing to lock down all of Europe, if only to justify lockdowns in the U.S.
Well, here's the thing. They're just so hysterical. You can kind of believe anything. Like, no conspiracy theory sounds too kooky. because of just how like completely insane they are. But I mean, I guess to me the interesting question is, it would be interesting if Trump would have lost legitimately if the lockdown wouldn't have happened. I mean, we'll never know, but that's kind of an interesting, I guess, counterfactual. I think the thing that maybe what it is the there was going to be election fraud, but because of the lockdown, Trump won by so much that it made the electoral fraud really obvious. Because I mean, and maybe we'll use this to transition to what we were going to talk about with what happened the day after. Because I mean, we were watching this together, and it looked pretty much like Trump had won. Like
Yeah.
we said, I think we did the math, and it said X number of votes remain to be counted, and we're like, even if they went 90% for Biden, he would still um, win. And
Yeah.
then
They ended up 99% for Biden.
no, and it no, but they just kept like I remember with like Georgia, it was at 100% counted, and then it just kept going back down to like 95% counted, and then it went up to 90. Like it just kept going down in terms of the number counted, and yeah, um, but it looked for all like
Yeah, I mean, I remember that night very well.
wasn't Trump ahead like 700,000 in Pennsylvania or some like absurdly high number when we shut the stream down at the end of the night?
You're cutting out again.
Oh, okay. Um,
Well, to answer what I heard, I mean, he was very significant. I think it was Michigan. We kept going back and forth over calling. I think because Michigan was only at like 65%, maybe. We held off on calling it while I was still in the stream.
mm-hmm.
But I think the general sense was like all of the states you have on this map right now, except for I don't know, maybe actually all of them looked like they were basically going Trump, except Wisconsin looked like it might go blue, but they were all, I would say, pretty favorable for Trump to take. And I wouldn't have been surprised if he had lost a few of them. Uh, but of course, as we know, they sort of just all magically went the other way in the middle of the
Well,
night.
they all
But yeah, I think
stopped. I think that was the most bizarre aspect of it. Um, was like they just all stopped like suddenly. Absolutely no counting. They're like, oh, we're not going to count anymore for the night. And then when I got up in the morning, there was like hundreds of thousands of more votes that showed up. Is Nevada even finished yet, or are they still counting there?
I don't even know if all of the states actually finished counting. I think they just stopped at some point. Um, and the votes will be counted at a future date. I don't know. That's actually a good question because I remember like Nevada just started slowing to a crawl. It might be possible that due to court orders and whatnot, they simply stopped. And just
I
aren't
think
actually
in
going to.
Nevada they would count votes received up to like 2 weeks after election day or something like that.
I think
So
that was Pennsylvania, but it might be Nevada. Either way, I mean that's obviously insane, right? I mean, how does that work? You can't.
like Nevada's not a big state. The joke I made was like if me and a couple guys from the Discord went down there, we would have had the votes counted. Like if we just would have like done it ourselves. It's like the joke someone made is they posted a picture of the sloth from Zootopia, and they're like, he's counting the votes there. But yeah, like when we went to bed, it seemed like to everybody. I mean, Trump won. We knew that it was going to get a lot closer because of the mail-in ballots. I mean, even if there wasn't any fraud, the mail-in ballots were obviously going to favor Biden.
Yeah.
But I think what happened was they had the fraud in place, but Trump won by a lot more than they thought he was going to win by. So they had to go into full blown panic mode. Um, then they literally shut it down and like desperately were trying to like find Biden ballots.
Yeah, that was my feel. I think that's I've seen this theory thrown around, and I think this is why Trump campaigned so hard in some of these swing states, all the way up until the last minute. I think his last rally was in Michigan, which I believe was the last rally he held in 2016, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he did that in order to make his victory so large that they would end up in this situation where the fraud would just be so obscene if they were actually go forward with it that there's no possible way they could have gotten away with it. And I think that's why so many states stopped at once, because I think the apparatus realized that it couldn't count on individual states to do what needed to be done, because they needed to win so many states, right? He was ahead by so much that they had to call the whole thing off, because or pause the whole thing rather, in order to ensure they actually got as many as they needed. I think they could have gotten away with the fraud if it ended up where, maybe Biden, maybe only like one state was contested or something, right? And the others,
Or if it was
or
like
rather,
10, 20,000 votes. Maybe if it was just
yeah,
Georgia. Because Georgia was probably fairly close. Well, we have no idea, but we'll just say maybe Georgia was like only a couple tens of thousands of votes difference. And we probably could have accepted like one state being like that. But the fact that all of them were ended yeah. So what was I thinking about again? But yeah, so all that stuff happened. So what was it you were saying that happened with you the next day?
yeah. So I mean, I think we all went to bed pretty confident that Trump was going to win. I went to bed, and I think all of the states, at least Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, were comfortably red, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, and maybe even Wisconsin might change. And I was like, well, this isn't a total blowout, but it looks like Trump is probably going to take this election. So I went to bed, I would say, with 80% certainty that Trump would win the election, and probably by, not a huge, but a respectable margin, just like in 2016. So I wake up in the morning, right, thinking that, well, Trump probably won, but I didn't check right away. I got in my, I went to meetings in the morning, and all the people, um, I work with, like, made their little comments on the election, right, and of course, they're all like, I don't want to say all progressive, but you know, basically, yeah, right. And
Mm-hmm.
the attitude was like, yep, well, looks like we have 4 more years of orange, man. So like that was really interesting, right? Because like I wake up, I get in my meetings, and all of the leftists think Trump won, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, the Young
they
Turks were
they
like
also
committing
they
suicide on stream.
this was interesting because these are just like normies. They probably didn't even stay up that late watching, right? Like they just assumed Trump won, and they didn't even seem to think it was weird that he won, right? They just kind of accepted it. It's almost like they knew it was coming, right? So then I go, like an hour after, I finally go and look at the map we had up, and I was like, well, wait a minute. They literally think Trump won. I'm looking at this map, and it seems to be saying that Biden won. What the heck is this? So I thought, and that was basically the whole story, right? But I thought that was really interesting because all of these left wing normies just thought Trump took it, um, and it was completely reasonable to them that Trump took it. Like that's kind of how obvious it was that he had won, is that they didn't even have in their head a question about whether or not Trump
Didn't
was
the New
president. They
York
literally
Times
thought,
say like he had 100% chance to win Georgia or something? Because I remember they had those like percent
hmm,
chance like gauges, and Georgia was like at 90% or something, and then they just shut it down and they didn't put any more up.
yeah. So if you recall, they had these during 2016 as well,
Mm-hmm.
and you're right. Is like in 2016 they were heavily favoring Hillary, and then they slowly drift towards Trump as he
Wasn't it like
got the votes and just won.
95% Hillary was going to win?
It was really high, yeah. So same thing. a few weeks ago when we were watching, we watched the gauges once again shift from Biden has it. They didn't have it as much as Hillary, right? But they were like, yeah, Biden's going to take this, and then it slowly goes to Trump to the point where it's like 90 something percent, right? And it's like, yeah, Trump is obviously going to take it. Like it's obvious to everyone that Trump was winning.
Hmm.
And then they just start shifting the other way, like sometime late in the night, and it's just like, well, that's weird. So yeah, that did happen, and yeah, I think that story was just, I think about that almost every day now. How people with every reason to not want Trump to win, not people who are even very politically interested per se. I don't. They might be. I don't actually know, but I do know that they're definitely against Orange Man, and they just thought he won.
Didn't
And
the
I think
Young
that's just kind
Turks
of what everyone thought.
basically think that he won on election night?
I wasn't. I don't remember. I think we were watching them a little bit, but that was more or less the prevailing attitude. And I've actually seen some videos posted today. Can't remember which account. It's like, I think it's just Loki guy I follow on
Hmm.
Twitter, who posted one, or it might have been Asha Logos. But they showed a video of like the CNN people looking surprised that the election was like shifting, because like I think probably by 10 p.m., but certainly by midnight, um, I think everyone kind of just accepted that Trump was probably winning the election by a pretty comfortable margin, right? And the resentment or grudging acceptance, depending on how left wing you are, kind of had set in, right? Like that's how far it had gotten to where the lefties had basically accepted it, and then it just turned around. Um, and if Biden had simply just won the election, or like we said, if it had just been, if the fraud or finesse, as Bannon's been saying, was more elegant and it looked legit, you know, I wouldn't question it really. I would be like, well, that kind of sucks, but it's really the fact that again, it was so obviously finessed that no one can look at this thing from day one and think that it looked legit, right? Just on its face, it looked illegitimate. But
D-
even then, I would have been fine, right? If the election just looked illegitimate, but it turned out that that's just how it went. That the mail-in ballots and everything, it just went that way. I'd be like, okay. But then, almost immediately, all of these allegations and evidences of fraud started just pouring out relentlessly. And that's how it's been for what, 2 or 3 weeks now, maybe even four. How long has it been? It's been almost a month.
hmm.
Um, so all of this evidence has just poured in, backing up the scale of this fraud. And I think that's really what seals the deal for me to recognize that they stole the election. It's not just that it looks stolen. It's that the evidence that it was stolen, as we saw presented today at that hearing, is just overwhelming at this point. Um, so I think that's where we stand in terms of the seal. Um,
So, like for
anyway,
me,
and yeah, that's my story, right?
for me, the thing that kind of that made me think that they stole the election was I remember watching it election night, and like New York, Illinois, a bunch of blue states were like a lot closer. I mean, obviously Trump was nowhere near winning them, but I think he picked up like 6% in New York, like 6% in Illinois or something. Like he made pretty big gains in a lot of blue states. And it just seemed really weird to me that he'd do better. And I think it was every state except for the swing states.
Yeah. I remember that too, that night, that we were kind of remarking at how well he was doing. I think Rhode Island looked like it might even go for him.
Hmm.
And definitely Virginia, for most of the night, looked like it could well go Trump. So I think it wasn't just that he was doing well in these states, it's that even in the states that he didn't win, and obviously wasn't going to win, like Illinois, New York, Virginia, well, maybe not even Virginia, but he did very well in these places, right? So that indicated to me that all of these places that look like they're going for Trump probably ought to be going for Trump. And I think Trump probably did win Virginia, because Virginia is very close. He doesn't need Virginia.
So,
But
like, here's the thing with Virginia. So, in 2016, I remember when I was looking at the map, the Washington or whatever the area, I don't recall what the counties around the Washington area are called, but everything had come in except for those. And then those came in, and that was what completely reversed it. But on election night, those had all come in, and he was still ahead by like a fair amount. I think Virginia. I forget if Virginia happened on election night, if they stopped it and then like they waited 3 hours and then the ballots started coming in. But I just like, for me, even like not even thinking about like any of this other stuff, just counting just stopping for several hours, it's just bizarre. Like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. Have you ever seen anything like that?
no, and not in one state, right? But like, uh, 6 states maybe. I mean, almost at the same time, and it just doesn't make sense. It's not. It's obviously not believable on its face that it would just happen in a bunch of states basically all at the same time. I mean, I just don't buy it. Maybe it's true, but I would at least want it investigated. But and then but the fact is they're trying to stop it from being investigated, right? Which just makes you want to investigate it even more.
I mean, like,
Yeah,
that's
the whole stop counting thing. It's just like that makes no sense. Why would the counting stop?
well. Here's the other thing: is if you're dealing with accusations of wrongdoing, you don't immediately go into full on cover up mode, start hysterically screaming, and like, because the media just went absolutely insane like after these like accusations started coming out. I think to me the big one is how they said there's no evidence of electoral fraud, which is like grammatically incorrect, because as I've said, even if you take the position that every single statistical witness is bullshit, I mean, you just say there's there's faulty evidence. Them saying there's none is like that doesn't make sense within the English language.
And they're still saying it. At this point, it's just an outright lie. I mean, they've been there in the room when Rudy Giuliani has presented the evidence, and not even a lot of the evidence, just a taste of it, right? And they're still saying that there's no evidence, and
Remember when
it's just
Rudy
an outright
said
lie.
you guys are going to say there's no evidence?
Yes,
I think he
that was an
even
amazing moment.
I think he even said you could I think he even made my exact point, like, you can say it's bad evidence, you can say it's inaccurate, but you can't say there's no evidence that's not like factual. So I mean, and I was making this comment on Twitter, and I guess we could maybe talk a bit about the this just what's going on, is if we're taking the perspective that sworn testimony is not legitimate evidence, how could, like, most crimes couldn't be prosecuted, right? Because, like, if you witnessed an assault or something, then I don't think there's often like video of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean we're talking about evidence, not proof, right? So evidence doesn't mean it's true. Like there could be, when a court case proceeds, evidence is presented by both sides, and whichever side has the more compelling evidence is the one that wins, right? So everyone's going to have some sort of evidence, and some might have better evidence or worse evidence.
Well,
And yeah, you're right. I mean, if sworn statements aren't evidence, how can any crime be prosecuted? Because most crimes are not captured on video, or there might not. I mean, even white collar crimes, there might not necessarily be, traceable, computer information or something like that. I mean, once again, I know you saw me joking on Twitter about the whole like believe all women thing. It's like, either statements, sworn statements, can be evidence or they can't be. You can't have it both ways, right? And again, you don't even have to say it's proof, right? It's just evidence. That's all it
You
is.
can say
But
that all the witnesses are coached and paid by the Trump campaign, and it's all bullshit. Um, I like that would be a reasonable, that would at least make logical sense. But the idea that like none of it, like it's just it's insane. Like that you can't that like the sworn testimony. So what I've been seeing is I haven't really seen anybody like definitively debunk it. All I hear is just people saying that the affidavits are bullshit. Um, I'm sure you've been seeing that too, like that they're crazy or like there's weird stuff in them or that judges are laughing them out of court. See, I don't even know because like I'll hear people say, "Oh, this lawsuit got dismissed," and it's like the Trump campaign screwed it, and then I'll read, "Oh, the lawsuit was dismissed because they got what they wanted somewhere else." Do you kind of know what I'm referring to? Like,
yeah,
so
well,
it's
well,
sorry, go on.
there are many cases, some filed by private citizens, some even before the elections, that are being dismissed. And every time one of these is dismissed, the media plays it up. And yeah, of course, some of the lower courts are going to rule against Trump, and then it's going to get appealed up. I mean, that's the whole point, the appeal process going up to the district courts and perhaps the Supreme Court. I mean, that's not even a problem. And I mean, you can just say the affidavits are made up. I don't understand who would be doing that in this current environment. I mean, who in their right mind would make up and who would lie, commit perjury, right, for a right wing candidate in today's climate, especially if he didn't win. I mean, that's just insane. Like, you look at what's happening to people. I don't buy that all these people are just making these things up, right? Because I think how well protected they are. I mean, look at the threats coming into people. I mean, maybe some could be made up, okay, but there's no way all this stuff is made up. It can't. I don't buy that. I
But
mean,
well,
and
it's
also, if it is made up, let's have some sworn statements from these Biden supporters that the counting didn't proceed as the affidavits say, right? That's what Giuliani said in the hearing today, is all you have is just these media talking points. We have hundreds of sworn statements. You have nothing. Go on record with something. But they can't,
well,
right?
it's like once again, I mean, if I get that, like if you're not guilty, there's nothing to fear. But this is like not a private thing. This is like the most public thing possible. Like, if why are they against making sure the people like what is it they wanted to check, like making sure that the people who filled out the ballots who supposedly voted were the people who voted. If no dead people voted, then what would be the issue of checking to see if dead, like what's the problem with that? What's the problem with like seeing if the same person's signed multiple ballots, that there's no electoral fraud? um
Exactly. Well, I mean, if there's no fraud, auditing the votes just should be no big deal, you know.
and I asked my father about this because he's like, I guess, center right by Canadian standards. He doesn't really like Trump, but I was just like, Dad, okay, so let's say there was no fraud. Do you think it's reasonable to suggest that there might be problems because of COVID and because they basically changed, like fundamentally altered the election system like 2 months before the presidential election? And he's like, yeah. I mean, like, even like I said, even if we take the perspective that nothing happened, that there was no fraud, the idea that like not only was there no fraud, but there was no administrative problems. Like,
Yeah, well, let's be clear that the United States conducted a presidential election in a way that it's never done so before.
mhm.
In the midst of this, we'll just say, alleged pandemic and these mail-in ballots, right? We're in unprecedented electoral territory here. It should be totally reasonable to just audit it, if only to examine the administrative process. So you're absolutely right there.
Because I mean, everything else is in chaos. Like stores are open and closing, services are available and not like on a daily basis. And then they're saying this is the most, like, this is a more accurate election than the elections that have happened during, I don't know, other things. And it's, I don't know if there's any other country in the, like, the developed world that runs elections like America does. I think part of the issue is you guys just have a lot more elected positions than most countries. Like, when you're looking at your ballot, how many positions do you vote for?
Um,
Like,
I
roughly.
think, I mean, it's gonna be like 5 to 10 because there's like, and it depends on the election. You know, this time there's the president, there's a few senators or reps, there's state level legislature, um, district attorneys, representatives, and then local things. There's usually some sort of amendments to vote on to the state constitution or your local government as well. So you know there are a lot of things on American ballots, and they're different across every state, um, and they're pretty substantial in every state as well.
Right. So I think that's the justification because I'd always like confused me because I actually worked a poll one Canadian election and because we only vote on one thing, I don't think there was a single ambiguous ballot at my entire poll station because it's literally just like six names on a piece of paper. There was a check mark in one spot. That was it. So I think the idea was that with like voting machines and all this weird stuff is because there's so many positions, maybe that's like the attempted justification that it's too hard to tally it. But I don't think there's another country where you have this issue where like some places use voting machines, some places don't use them. Everyone uses like different ballots down to the county level.
Yeah, well, I can explain this. I mean, in the U.S. Constitution, it delegates the power of holding elections to the state legislatures, and so every state can conduct an election however the hell it wants. And some of it's electronic, some of it's by paper. It's all with different stuff. So I mean that's a problem too, right? That's another reason. That's more reasons to do auditing because every state is conducting an election in their own unique, special snowflake way, right? Like in my state, we have these really old. I think they were referenced in the hearing today. These old like World War II era machines or something. They're probably not that old, but you know I can remember when I was a kid, I'd walk into these exact same machines with my parents while they voted, right? And now I'm walking to probably literally the same physical device to cast my vote. And even the same, you know, in my small community, the same people are there, you know, administrating the election, right? It's literally been like the same people for 30 years, but um, you know, in other places, it's going to be completely different, especially in these Democrat cities, right?
I just think they should just use paper ballot. Like, just
Oh, absolutely.
I
All
get
this
that it.
electronic voting.
I mean, I get that it
Yeah.
takes like marginally longer, but like when I did elections, okay, so you had a stack of ballots. The person comes in, you give them the ballot. As the person giving them the ballot, because it's nonpartisan, we have Elections Canada that manages this. They like mark the ballot, they put it in the box. We open the box at the end of the night. You just count it, you send in the results. Like, it shouldn't be this complicated. Um, I mean, I think that speaks to the fact that there is shenanigans. Sorry, one second. Somebody sent me in a super chat. So Blue Eyed Bear says, "Have you heard of the YouTube channel No White Guilt? I used to be blackpilled before I found that channel, but now I'm very hopeful because I know there's a way to save us from the anti-whites." No, I have not heard of that channel. Maybe I'll check that out later. But I appreciate the donation. I think America is also the only developed country that doesn't have uniform, that doesn't require, like, as a matter of national law, identification to vote.
Yeah, I mean, that would require a constitutional amendment. I think in order to actually do that legally, because of the way the Constitution is written. So, it would be no small feat to introduce any national level uh, alteration to how voting works, right?
But even that, like, people make the case at a state level that okay, I might I think this, I'm not sure if this person's spamming or not. But like, I don't know what reason you would have for opposing voter ID laws unless you're trying to rig the election. Like, I don't get why that's. And then they'll say, well, black people can't afford driver's licenses, and they'll be like, okay, then
I mean,
we'll pay for them.
well, how about this? The president just gave like $1,000 to every person in the country. So please explain how you can't afford an ID. I mean, we could just subsidize it, just make it free, right?
No, I
Like,
mean, I'm fine with
there's
that.
no argument. There's no argument for it. I mean, again, you're right. There's no argument for the ID thing.
I'm perfectly fine with tax dollars being, like, just they go down to, I don't know if there's house, because in Ontario we have Service Ontario that deals with that. You go down to wherever your local office is, they take your picture, they mail you your ID, done. And I guess the idea is that, like, people have too little agency. How do you even survive in modern society without an ID? Like, I don't even get it. Like, you need an
I know.
ID for everything.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's no argument for it. It doesn't
How
make any sense.
do they not, like? Don't you need one to see a doctor? Like,
I mean, you'll need to see a doctor. You would need insurance, really, and
that would have
I
your
don't know how
name
you
and
would have
address on
insurance.
it.
Yeah, I mean, even if you go to like a clinic, they're still gonna want some sort of identification. I mean, yeah,
Because, like, in Canada, they said, okay, so it's one photo ID with the address on it, or two IDs with their name and address on it. So it would be like, I think for some people they brought in their credit card statement and their electric bill, and it said their name and their address. Like, fine, here's your bill. Like, the idea that people don't get, so I guess they don't pay any bills, they don't use any services that would work. Even if they got welfare
well,
checks, the welfare check envelope would have their name and address on it. Like,
I
it's.
mean, they could pay their landlord in cash. Maybe the landlord pays the bills.
So I guess, like, we're supposed to believe, like, the state government just gives them, like, a envelope full of, like, bills, and they pay for everything. Like, it's just.
You're not even going to be voting anyway. I mean, and
Because
if you want to vote, I mean, just go get your license. I mean,
I'm sorry for the audience if I'm belaboring this point, but I really don't see any reason other than electoral fraud for not having voter ID laws. I remember, I forget who it was. There was one conservative journalist who got Eric Holder's ballot. Um, like, he just went in and said, "I'm Eric Holder because I have the ballot," and when he was Attorney General, and he got it. He didn't do it because that would have been fraud, but he got the attorney, because I think it was after the Attorney General said there's no possibility of electoral fraud. So, but okay, so maybe moving along. So, do you want to talk maybe a bit about the? So you went to the Million Maga March, right?
oh, yeah, yeah, that was a lot of fun for sure. Um, so let's see, how'd that go? Yeah, so I guess if you watched Academic Agents channel, I actually was on a
That
stream,
was a really good stream, by the
sitting
way.
in the airport. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. Actually, the other guy on the stream, not Clossigan, well, Clossigan as well, but Full War, he was at the march as well, and I met him. So to start at the very beginning, yeah, that was me waiting in the airport, streaming on my phone. I was with a friend, so we flew to Virginia for the march, right?
Hmm.
That morning, Clossington picks us up. Clossington's another YouTuber.
Hmm.
Some of the chat might be familiar with him. Another neo-reactionary, so check his channel out. He picks us up from the hotel, and we head over to
Sorry, one second. Your
So
robot.
we meet up with a lot of other guys there. Um,
Sorry, could you just repeat that? You're
yeah,
just
no problem.
roboting there for a second. What'd you say?
Oh, so we had a designated meetup point, for everyone to assemble at. We get there about 9, and we're supposed to stay there till 11, right? So we're chatting with a lot of people for a few hours. Eventually, our group gets together. Um, I should mention on the way walking there, actually, we saw some Maga trucks, like people in trucks driving past, and they they informed us that there was like a crazy woman on the corner. um and indeed there was, and she was like yelling at us. She called us, I guess I probably shouldn't say the word, but she called us the homophobic F word.
Oh, okay.
And yelled it at us for like 2 blocks, which is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And we got yelled at by several insane lunatics, many of the lunatics who inhabit Washington. um Actually, before we got to the meetup point, we talked to this dealer, some Asian chap who was selling like gear for both sides, basically, for the
It's,
rally.
it's
And
a
like,
very Asian thing to do.
yeah, yeah, and we had a good conversation with him. Just asked him, why was everything boarded up? Do people bother you? And he actually talked about how sometimes people come flip over his stand, even though he has no like political preference here, and it's like he has gear for both sides, right? Stuff for Trump, making fun of Trump. And also there's like, you can literally see police standing there, right? And he said they do nothing to help him when random leftists come over and just destroy his property, basically. So that's brilliant, right? But so that's DC for you. Wretched hive of scum and villainy. Anyway, back to the rally. So eventually we assemble our group. It's a pretty good group. We've got like 15 or so people in there, including, as far as YouTube people go, it was me, Closington, Don the Pleb, and it was more or less Don the Pleb's group that we latched onto. We had Semiogog with us. Benedict was actually there. I think you've probably talked to Benedict before on stream. Settler's Lament has him on a few times, I know. Um, let's see. Yiz was there as well. So we had a pretty solid group. Um, Eventually, we would walk our way to Freedom Plaza. We actually had to walk through the BLM people to get there. The police actually made everyone walk through where BLM was organized, because of course they did. But it was just like a few idiots who yelled at us, whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
we get to Freedom Plaza, and like the number of people there is just insane. And you can hear people on the microphone. We actually saw Roosh V walk past us, which was funny. Um,
Oh,
he
interesting.
apparently held some sort of secret. Yeah, he had like a secret password required meetup at some point. We didn't go to that, but yeah, there were a lot of people there.
Did
So the
you
plaza
see
was just
Nick
filled.
when you were there?
Yeah, so Clossington scoped out the plaza, did a little recon mission, then reported back to us. So eventually we worked our way through Freedom Plaza, which was just packed. There must have been at least 10,000 people in Freedom Plaza alone.
Mm-hmm.
And there were plenty of speakers there. Uh, we found the America First people. You've probably seen this on video. They had their own little pedestal that they basically
Mm-hmm.
climbed onto, in Freedom Plaza. That was sort of a separate little micro event going on at the same time, while the main stage had various speakers on it. And so yeah, I was there. We waited there for Fuentes to show up, and he did show up. Fuentes recorded, or I recorded his speech, sort of Closington actually, and he gave a very rousing America First speech. I think ironically Charlie Kirk was talking almost at the same time as him on the main stage. We missed Alex Jones, but that's okay. We saw Fuentes, and that was really cool. Just to like be among those guys. IRL on the ground where it's going down, basically. And yeah, so there were just the Freedom Plaza area itself was just awesome and just filled with so many people. And the energy was very high. Everyone very happy. So many Trump flags, so many American flags, a couple Gadsden flags, and other cool things. Even the occasional SPQR flag, and it was just an awesome time. So of course, from Freedom Plaza, you can actually see all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue, right
Hmm.
to the Capitol building itself, and um, that's where you go basically. The rally is starts in Freedom Plaza, walk to the Capitol and or Supreme Court, which we did. So we walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I need to put out the videos I took of this at some point, but I think Don the Pleb, he streamed a lot of it anyway, so you could just check his stuff out if you want to actually see what our experience was, because I was with him and the rest of the group the whole time. And yeah, Freedom Plaza, or sorry, Pennsylvania Avenue was filled with thousands of people walking down it the whole time, right? Like, um, the march was scheduled to do that walk, but there were just people streaming there constantly. Like, basically, the way the rally worked is people were constantly streaming into Freedom Plaza and constantly streaming out all the way to the Supreme Court. Um, and there were thousands of people the whole time at all stages of the place. So um, that was quite a long walk. Eventually, we get to Capitol Hill. We saw um, I think this was later actually. Yeah, so we get to Capitol Hill. Um,
Oh,
quite a few
sorry.
people there. The
I can
main
interrupt you for a
rally.
second. How much?
Yeah.
So how much looting and destruction of property was there?
Oh, literally nothing. I mean, there was no littering.
Really?
Um, I'll just as a side comment, I'll give you a bit from later on. We went to some bars and
Hmm.
whatnot after, and the wait staff, the waitresses, um, she told us that they made more money tonight than they had in like 3 months, and they loved how we actually ordered food and not just attendees, um, and we were polite and patient, and tipped really well and didn't make a huge mess. Because like the normal clientele they have in DC are just these total low lives who basically order no food. They just order like the cheapest thing, which is like wings or something, and then are rude and don't tip. But like they had a great time um, serving all of the patriots and made a ridiculous amount of money um, during the march, because obviously we tip very well and order a lot of stuff because we actually are productive people. And
So, as I said, I think it's the mystery Scooby Doo couldn't solve. Why the Million Maga March didn't have any looting or theft or destruction of property, but BLM always does. Um, I don't think there's any explanation for that we could really come up with. But sorry, I interrupt you. I just wanted to make that joke. Go.
oh yeah, no, I mean we all get that, right? Um, but So yeah, we walked to the Capitol. We walked to the Supreme Court, which is like right behind the U.S. Capitol. If you don't
Mhm.
know where it is, and actually, if you just this weird side note, but I did go to the Capitol a few years ago, and if you watch any of my videos, anytime I picture the Supreme Court or usually the White House or Capitol, um, mostly those are pictures I actually took. Um, just a little bit of trivia there. But so we go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is just packed. I mean, it is like people crammed in there like sardines. It's also the most polite crowd ever. Like, even though it's navigating it is like ridiculously slow, it's just people like patiently snaking their way in these like crammed lines to where they want to go. So even like the most chaotic portions were like very orderly and polite, even though people were just utterly crammed in there.
Hmm.
So it was I think we arrived too late at the Supreme Court to actually like really get in there, because there were people speaking there as well, but it was so packed we sort of snaked our way in and out. But we did get to see Antifa there. So there was a little Antifa line of people behind the police line right by the Supreme Court, waiting for us basically. And of course, they were just hurling insults and all that. And that was pretty amusing because the police were facing Antifa, right? Not us. And there were literally like 10,000 people behind the police in the area of the Supreme Court and behind the Capitol. But instead of facing them, they were facing like the few dozen Antifa people on the opposite side, because the police at the end of the day know who's going to cause a problem and who isn't, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
not the 10,000 MAGA people; it's the few dozen Antifa guys. And it was really funny because we went right up to Antifa, kind of observed them looking stupid and ugly, and you can see that they had no ranks, right? Like the MAGA people just had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people just like gawking at them basically. um and Antifa is just open street behind them, right? Like there's like the few guys out in front, and then behind them it's just empty street. There's like no one there because they don't have the numbers we have. That was like one of the most interesting things about the rally is that I realized it's not a joke that there were hundreds of thousands of people there. I
Mm-hmm.
realized like the extent to which the right wing actually outnumbers the BLM and Antifa people when we actually go there on the ground. Like they're hilariously outnumbered in terms of protest power. Um, and a lot of these BLM things too, they're just it's not even a proper protest. It's more just like random chaos happening in the streets. But in this case, we literally had a few 100,000 people packed into the National Mall area and Pennsylvania Avenue, causing no problems, and it was a lot more focused. So I thought that was pretty cool and just pretty interesting and very white pilling because you see all this garbage happening on the streets, and the media tries to gaslight you into feeling that the leftists have the power on the ground, and they do in a sense in that they actually go out and organize. But I think we got to see that when the right wing actually decides to go out and get there on the ground at these protests, we actually hilariously outnumber what the left is able to produce. So that was the main thing I took away from
I,
like the
I,
general protest.
I think what it
Yeah, go ahead.
is most people who like vote Republican or vote conservative, they don't really care about. They ultimately don't want to like. They ultimately just would prefer not to have to deal with politics. They want to go. They want to go to church. They want to provide from their family, and they want to like work hard at their job and make money. Like that's their set of priorities, which is what your priorities should be. They don't really look to politics as a form of personal salvation and to give their lives meaning. So a lot of them just can't do this because they work for a living or like they have kids they have to take care of or something. Um,
Yeah, well, that was an interesting thing too. Is as this whole problem of families and jobs. It's like this rally was organized totally organically, and it was mostly just not fringe people, but just normal people there, and we came together in this fashion without the media really talking about it at all. Like this demonstrated to me the power of the anti cathedral that we've built up over the last few years. We can get hundreds of thousands of people there in DC purely through our networks now, with no mainstream media attention whatsoever, right? Um,
because
which was just kind of mind blowing
I
because
was just worried that like it was no one was going to show up because it was a media blackout and it was too short notice. But I mean, everyone really turned out.
everyone was right. Like everyone who went, I think, was worried that we have no idea what's going to be here, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it could be like nothing. I think, I mean, it was just going in blind, really, and it turned out that it was just overwhelmingly enormous in terms of the turnout there. I mean, you can't even. I've never seen that many people in a single place at one time like that, even in stadiums, right? I mean, you can't. The turnout was just enormous. Bigger than any Trump rally. People from all over the country, right? Like, because we talked to many people. I mean, just on my flights in and out, um, on my one plane, it was like a dozen or so people, or there and back. I mean, like who also were there for the rally, right? And that just kind of goes to show you, like, one flight from one city has a lot of people willing to fly out for the weekend into the unknown basically and actually participate in the thing. So like, and there's leftists don't do that, right? When was the last time? I mean, they get bussed around sometime, right? But like, Um, they're not flying in from around the country for like a Biden rally
I mean, I'm
in the
sure some of the professionals are. I mean, from
yeah,
my
no, the
understanding,
professionals are.
Antifa is like there's some professionals in like university faculty, but most of them are like the lumpen proletariat or just like homeless people who they give money to like. So would you say like a lot of the people you met there were just like normal people who had like jobs and were well-adjusted members of society?
Definitely. It was people from every age bracket, um, creed, race, um, all in there. Mostly, like very clearly, not the edgy boy reactionary type of politics we're into. That was represented as well, but it's very obviously mostly just normal MAGA Americans who were really serious about not backing down from the steal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was really cool. It wasn't some fringe protest. I mean, we saw like the Proud Boys there, and there was like 100 or so at least,
How
just in
many?
the
Oh,
front
you saw the
group.
Proud Boys? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they were
They
running
were
the
pretty
whole
interesting
thing,
to
right?
watch.
They organized the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like if you didn't know what a Proud Boy was, you would have no idea that they were even there or that it was anything more than like a biker gang, right? Like a normie would have looked at those guys in their Proud Boys areas and like, oh, look, there's like a biker gang here, right? Like, um, and that's not to like denigrate them, but just to say that this was not a Proud Boys or a fringe rally. It was totally a mainstream rally, to be honest, right? And like that was great. So
I think if nothing else, that was a really good thing to come out of this whole debacle. Because other than like the Tea Party, I can't really think of anything like this that like conservatives have done in years of this scale.
no, not even close. I mean, nothing like this has ever happened in our lifetimes, right? This is a paradigm shift, and I should make that clear, right? It's very clear to me that something is happening now in what the right wing in the United States is willing to do in terms of tactics that is fundamentally shifted. Now we're in like a different era of um, right wing politics, basically, and yeah, I mean the other big win too is like we didn't actually see it, but I think we heard the cheering. But the president's motorcade drove through the crowd several times, and he was there on the ground and he witnessed the thing, right? And like you can watch some of the videos of it, and it's pretty clear that he was happy, very astounded, taken aback. I think just at the sheer volume of people who came out to the Capitol from all over, for him, right? And I think, like I said earlier, that really needed to be done to, I think, to drive him forward
Yeah,
in what
because
he's
I mean,
doing
you
right
got to
now.
feel really lonely there in the swamp, surrounded
Yeah,
by snakes. And I mean, it was the
especially with
American.
all
Yeah.
these losers, right? Like think about like we passed the BLM street, right? And like you can't even notice the BLM written on the street because the street's so big, right? Like it only looks impressive from the sky.
Hmm.
You literally can't even notice it on the ground. Um, and yeah, I mean, think about all of this crap he has to deal with all the time. All these left wingers, effing up his city and
I just
just
mean like
denigrating him.
because like this administration, more than like anything else I think I've ever seen, there's so many snakes around Trump who like
Yeah,
backstab him. I don't know how much of it is the swamp and how much of it is Trump being a bad judge of character or what, but like you got to get really lonely there when literally like everybody has like snaked on you. So I think it's good that yeah, you just were there and you showed the president that a lot of people do have his back. A lot of people do support him and his vision for the country, and because I think to a certain extent the fact that the media is so hysterical, we should kind of see as a compliment because I think it shows that they're
yeah,
like scared of us.
definitely. I mean, I don't see why they would be, frankly, blowing it this hard. if uh, if they weren't legitimately scared in some way. I mean, they're really putting all the chips on the table here. Um, like I don't think they would be doing that if they weren't very concerned about this guy staying in office or this movement in general, right? Um, and so yeah, I agree. Like again, the left wing's reaction to what's going on is, definitely demonstrates to me that this is significant in some way.
I mean, if it was 100% a done deal, there was no threat whatsoever to Biden, why would they need to be like hysterically screaming that there's no evidence 24/7?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I mean, maybe they're just doubling down, but like, I think Kamala still hasn't resigned her Senate seat. Like, what was that thing? I think there was Nick was, I forget who it was. Oh no, that was from Academic Agent Stream, where he's talking about how Biden had the fake national security briefing or whatever. I think it was something like that. Like he had a fake one to
Yeah.
pretend that he was president elect or something. And
I
then
mean, that's just you almost feel bad for him. Like
and then he's like, "Oh yeah, Kamala gave me all this information from the Senate Intelligence Committee." It's like I don't.
that's really interesting
Mm,
because I'm not sure what is or isn't legal there, but I'm not sure if that is legal. Um, I think he didn't directly say that she was giving him information. He
okay.
said it was useful that his, and I think it's definitely worded this way on purpose, right? He said it's
Mhm.
useful that she's on the House Intelligence Committee, but again, I don't know the laws here, but I doubt it's legal, strictly speaking, for her to just basically declassify information, right? I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't want to say too much here
He
because
he
I don't know,
he
but
probably does have like what it. Well, he almost certainly has whatever clearance, but
absolutely, yeah.
it's it.
That's a good point because he was VP. Yeah.
Because like sometimes when I've applied for government jobs, they've made me do whatever it is. But even so, like it's just I don't know, Joe, if that's really something you want to be like spreading around. It's kind of
I mean, even putting the idea in people's heads that Kamala Harris is like spilling the beans, right, from the House Intelligence Committee. That's not exactly something you want to be gloating about right now. I would
now
think.
I know
Um,
former presidents I think have a right to daily intelligence briefings. I'm not sure if vice presidents do. They might, but it's just like this whole Biden is the president elect. I don't know if I've ever really heard. I think I've heard of it as like a title that is kind of given for the clear winner of the election. I didn't really know there was an official office, or is there?
um, I'm pretty sure that was created by Obama.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it's not really a traditional thing in the United States. Once again, it's basically just some BS that the Dems made up, because they wanted to, and it helps legitimize them, right? Um, so yeah, all this office of the president elect stuff and all the official you know decor and everything like that and all the process. I mean, this is all just nonsense. This is all just made up, right? I mean, this isn't um he's not in the government, right? So you can just ignore it in terms of like anything, even the GSA thing the other day, right? I mean, um once again the media is trying to gaslight you into thinking that like Trump has conceded, even though that GSA thing, um, as far as like the transition starting, that was literally just a release of funds, um, $7 million or whatever, which is like nothing. Honestly, Trump is probably just like, look, just release the funding because a you're getting threatened, right, by
Mm-hmm.
people like everyone else is, and b it doesn't matter if they have 700. It doesn't matter if they have $7 million from the government. I mean, and also it's probably better if they take it and spend it, right? Especially if the election is stolen, right? That might actually be criminal for them to take this money, knowing that they committed crimes to receive it, right? So like, um, again, it's always going to look like um, the media is always going to play up anything that makes it look like Biden is winning. But in terms of what's actually happened so far, he hasn't really gotten anywhere in terms of taking the presidency. And I think he's only losing ground at this point. The administration's made it quite clear that they do not intend to allow any transition to another president to happen. And I guess you could say this is all just some sort of ploy to get more donations or something. I mean, that's probably a matter of public record. I'm pretty sure you could just look up at the donations, but to me, it doesn't look like this is some sort of um, selfish move by these people to just eke out a few more donations from their donors. I mean, that makes no sense to me.
I
Considering,
don't get, because people are saying, I've been telling me this is a grift by Trump to pay off campaign debt.
I
Well,
mean,
I imagine they're running up massive legal bills. Like I can't even
oh
imagine
yeah, tens of billions of dollars.
how much money that this is costing him. I mean, I think if Trump wanted to grift, he'd say, "Oh, we lost this, but I'm going to come back in 2024. Give me money, so we can get started on that." I just feel like if you're going to grift, this is like one of the worst ways to do it.
Well, also, if he needed money for the debt, why would he deny the $500,000 or so salary he would have by now from the president? Like he's literally given it away, I think, to the park services or something. His paychecks, which are well in excess of $100,000. Um, why would that be given away? I don't see any asking for donations anywhere.
I haven't seen much fundraising off of this at all.
No, in
Uh,
fact, I've seen Biden start a GoFundMe for.
for the
um,
transition,
yes. Did you see that?
yeah, I saw it. It's really lame, especially when literally like every billionaire other than Trump is supporting Biden. You'd think he could be able to, they'd be able to cough up the money, but I don't know if it's a grift. It's like the lamest grift I've ever seen. Um, because I don't know, like I said, the amount of money, also just people flying around the country to deal with this stuff. Like some people are called have called Nick a grifter for this. I can't even imagine how expensive it is for him to just fly around. And he's like, I have to get a security detail and the hotels. Like, uh,
Or some people claim he's like a Fed or something too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, okay, I guess everyone could be a Fed. Now what? Like
I mean, the thing with Nick is Nick's still, how old is Nick now? Is he 21 or 22?
I think he's
Or
probably 22. Might even be 23 by now.
yeah, I mean, he's still a kid. Like he's learning. He's taken on more responsibility at a younger age than just about anyone I've ever met. So he's going to be rough around the edges. I think he's come immensely far since when I first saw him a couple years ago. He's a lot more relaxed now. He's a lot more coherent. Um, just on that topic, though, I've seen some people say that like Giuliani does really bad press conferences. I don't even really get that. Like, because the main criticism I saw of the one he did the other day was that he was sweating.
It's okay. I mean, have you ever been in front of stage lights? I mean, do you realize how hot it must have been in that room? Um, a small room filled with people and really bright lights on him. I mean, also, who cares? I mean, human beings sweat. People act like people have watched too many movies, dude. Like,
Also, like people sweat in like situations like that. You're just nervous. Like it's hard going in front of like the whole country and doing that. And like they try to make it, oh, it's like shifty that he's nervous talking in front of the country when everyone's shitting on him. I mean, that stuff is really like difficult. Um, but I thought like in the first press conference he did a really good job. Um, Rudy's a really smart guy. He's very charismatic. I think he does the talking to his kind of talking to the public in, I don't know if folksy way is the right way to put it, but just in a way that is very easy for them to understand without it seeming like disingenuous, like something George W. Bush would do. Do you kind of get what I mean?
hmm
like I remember people also made like they were criticizing him for using a movie quote. Like that
Ugh.
was like it's like it's like, oh, they're referencing this guy, this like movie about Italian from the Bronx or whatever, and it's just like, yeah, but he's like an Italian from New York, so like who
Wow, yeah,
cares?
an Italian from New York is referencing movies about Italians from New York. Wow, it's crazy, right? I mean, I mean, look at the left, right? They literally live by like Marvel movies and Star Wars and crap. I mean, in I think a lot of our cultures is defined by movies at this point. Just what's wrong with referencing a film? I mean, everyone does that.
Well,
You know,
it's
it's like, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say their entire perception of how guns work is based off of Hollywood movies. Like, why don't they just shoot the
What
guy in the leg? What?
one of the funny one of the funny things about like if you're into guns, if you see like an AR-15 in a movie, right?
Mhm.
It's almost never charged correctly because the charging handle is like this thing on the top of the gun. But if you watch um, people use AR-15s in movies, they always just like fiddle with it off to the side, and then it makes a cocking sound, and it's like, oh yeah, that's how that works. Even though you can literally see the handle, the charging handle, just not move. It's very funny.
Also, isn't it like because I've only fired a gun once in my life, but aren't isn't it really hard to hit anything with a pistol?
Oh yeah, I mean you can get good with them, but like pistols are ridiculously hard to aim. Um,
I mean, like let's say
just
you're a
because
cop
the
in like
barrel's
a
really short.
yeah.
The,
Sorry, go on. I
yeah, I
interrupt.
mean the barrel's really short. Um, you know, you're not the gun isn't you know like mounted or resting on anything, right? So you're totally relying on your hands, and like even if you held it in like a machine, it would still not hit the same thing at a very far distance, just because it's not designed to. Um, I mean, pistols. I mean, I can take a rifle, a modern rifle, and hit a target 100 yards away, um, at least 50% of the time. Right, I haven't even shot that much, but try the same thing with a pistol at close range, and it's not easy at all. I mean, so
I might be
any
ignorant,
idea,
but I'd
any idea
imagine
that you can,
like with rifles, it's a lot easier to just line up, if especially if you
yeah,
have
I
a
mean,
sight and just shoot.
yeah, um, even standing up, right, with a rifle, not even resting it on anything, you can hit targets 100 yards away. Um, but a pistol at close range, I mean, it's pretty hard to get good groupings. Uh, so the idea that you can just, I don't know, shoot someone in the leg or whatever, or that you even have much time to think at all. I mean,
Especially
yeah.
if they're shooting at you or like you're running or it's the heat of the
Oh yeah, if
moment.
you're moving, okay,
I think one of my
then you're not
favorite
kidding.
ones is they didn't have to shoot him 7 times. They could have just shot him like 3 times, and it's just like,
I mean, you don't even know if you hit him
yeah,
like
you don't.
initially, right?
Hmm.
Like, you know, yeah. I mean, like, I don't know if someone's running at you, you're just gonna shoot at them until they stop running, and probably even then some, just because you're on adrenaline in the moment, right? I
Well,
mean,
you have no way
so
of telling if you hit them or not.
no, because I mean, you can people will still act like they weren't shot even if they were. So this whole idea that you can like logic your way through the situation is just nonsense. And it, you know, in movies when you watch someone get shot in a pistol with a pistol and they just like drop. I mean, again, doesn't happen. Right? It's just it can happen, but you know, if people are really angry, if they're on drugs, really amped up, you know, they're not just gonna stop until they're biologically forced to, right?
Well,
And
it only takes a second for them to pull their trigger and shoot back at you.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, the way people talk about guns in the United States is just insane. You know, especially on the left wing side, it's like they clearly just have no concept of how these things work at all.
Hmm.
Um,
I think I think my all-time favorite one from like when you had the wave of crime was oh, the guy wasn't shooting at the cops, he was trying to shoot out the tires on their car. It was some nonsense. I gotta imagine without it, like even with a rifle, that's got to be almost impossible. Um, Unless the
I
car's
mean,
like
if the car's
stationary.
moving, yeah, if
Yeah.
the car's stationary, no problem. If the car's moving, you know, hitting moving targets is not easy, especially if you're far away. So,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know. How about how about you get in a car and someone shoots out the tires? Are you going to be comfortable? Probably not. So yeah, this whole all the shoot the tires, shoot the legs. I mean, this is all just
Isn't
ridiculous.
isn't there a good chance of hitting like arteries in people's legs and
Yeah, I
they
mean
like bleed to
that's
death?
how people die in wars. I mean, if you get shot in the leg, if you're I forget the name of the artery, but if the artery gets hit, you're dead. It's not even really safer to shoot people in the leg, so it doesn't even make sense, right? I mean, but yeah, I mean we're probably getting a little off topic at this point, so maybe
Yeah,
we
it's
should.
just a topic I find funny. But yeah, so I just want to say I think like Rudy's doing a really good job. I mean, I don't know because people are saying, "Oh, there's a low opinion of him as a lawyer." I mean, who even knows? But in terms of like being able, regardless of whether the evidence is real or not, in terms of being able to go out, explain things to the average person, and do it in a way that's entertaining and engaging, like he is a very coherent person, which is rare uh, in any kind of public role, let alone for a politician. So I don't know. I think he's doing a good job. I have no idea what's even. Do you have any idea what's happening with any of the lawsuits or?
I haven't looked too much at the lawsuits. I mean, they're publicly available. I just kind of follow the press conferences. I have no time to go read these massive legal documents. I have other stuff to do,
No,
and my opinion doesn't matter anyway. I mean,
no,
even if I'm
no. I mean not that, but like the people who said every single one's been dismissed or whatever. Because
I
that's
mean,
like the media's current one at the moment.
yeah, well, like I said earlier, there are lots of cases that aren't from the Trump campaign that are being dismissed. There are some rulings against um, the cases Giuliani's working on, and that's completely expected, right? They get appealed up to the higher courts. Like I said, that's kind of the entire point. Also, partly why Trump has been, filling the courts, appointing judges to district courts at an unprecedented level. I mean, obviously that was done for a reason, um, and I think they're expecting and hoping to some degree that the legal system works as intended from doing this. But I mean, yeah, we have activist judges are a thing. Some of the cases are going to take initial hits, but it's not even really a hit because we're expecting this to happen. So the media, of course, is going to play this up, but these cases are still being prosecuted. And look, until they go to the Supreme Court, um, you know, that's the end of the line,
Also,
right?
it's insane. Like if you think about it, the turnaround time for this, like
Oh yeah,
having to
dude, the
like
turnaround is crazy.
they're just
Yeah,
having to
there's
like
like it's like
rush
two
all
weeks.
this. It's so it's just even with like as fast as things are moving, like you can't expect everything to be resolved in like a couple days. I mean, I think at this point, if we could just get one state, then I would give like I don't really want to get into chances because I keep going back and forth and on what's going to happen, and I'm just kind of on board with trust the plan at this point because like Rudy seems to know what he's doing. Trump, even if his Twitter's kind of goofy, seems to know what he's doing. Um, you had like a whole bunch, like the amount of stuff. I don't know if you watched much of the Senate hearing in Pennsylvania, but the amount of stuff they
Yeah, I watched the
dumped
whole thing.
in like a couple of hours was astounding.
That yeah, again, one of the best. I don't want to say press conferences because it was actually a hearing. They commented on that in the hearing, one of the most important hearings in American history, probably certainly in Pennsylvania history, and it's pretty clear that they have a serious body of evidence to back up their claims. And again, none of these cases are over until um, either Trump's team gives up or the Supreme Court rules on them. Right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so no no dismissals, rulings against matter until the case is dropped or the Supreme Court rules. Right? I mean,
So I,
so it's simply a lie by the media at this point to say in any of these cases that it's over, right? Because I mean, the Supreme Court is the highest court there is, and all of these cases can go to the Supreme Court. There is no legal case in the entire United States of America that is outside of the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Period. Um, that's laid out very clearly in the U.S. Constitution, right? So we have to remember that step is always there, and of course they intend to take it there if necessary.
I mean, and like, who knows if they're telling the truth or not? But I do recall at the end, some of the senators were like, "Yeah, we're gonna start working on this legislatively like tomorrow."
Yeah. Well,
Um,
of course. I mean, look
yeah.
at your map here, right? Like, you mentioned that all we need is like one state. I think if Trump actually flipped one state, that would do a lot
I
to like
was
encourage other
counting
states
wrong.
to move towards flipping.
When I message you, if they take Georgia, Arizona, and one other, um, then that would be enough. Georgia, Pennsylvania, and one other. I actually have a fairly good feeling about Wisconsin, from what I know
Hmm.
about it, just because I think they have very strict rules on mail-in ballots there. Um,
Well, I would go a step further. Like, actually, based on this map you have here, it's actually more like you need 0 states to certify, right? If the map that we're looking at now stays like it is, and these states just do not certify any results
I mean,
and
Georgia
do not
did,
send electors. Okay, Georgia did, fair enough, but
but they've kind of undone it. Like, it's really weird.
I have no idea. I have no idea at this point.
I don't know if these are certified.
Georgia,
I just did these for states like where there's like major fights going on.
right, right. Georgia is a mess, and it's pretty clear that Georgia is one of the major battlegrounds. Also because of the runoff that's happening there, right? I mean, they're really focusing on Georgia.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to count on anything from Georgia either way until they do not send electors, because Georgia is a mess. Um, the other states potentially could turn into a mess, and they are a mess. Well, right now, obviously, but I think Georgia seems, for some reason, it seems like the Democrats, even beyond the runoff, are really focusing on Georgia. I think it's because of the two, um, the the Secretary of State and the governor being rhinos, basically. I think they probably feel like they have an upper hand there. But back to my point, right? If neither candidate gets to 270 electors, then it's going to go to the states, basically, which, based on the numbers, would side with Trump if you just look at the party lines. And that's really the key, right? Like, you don't even necessarily need these states to send electors for Trump rather than Biden. Rather, you simply need to ensure that Biden does not get to 270 electors. That's the target, right? It would be great if Trump can simply win in the electoral college. The better, the easier case is simply don't send electors in states where the results are untrustworthy, and then Trump will basically
I
take it.
think all of those states have Republican. Maybe Nevada doesn't. I think most, because I know Pennsylvania does, Georgia does, Arizona I think does, Michigan does. I think most of those states have Republican state legislatures. Let me just.
I don't remember which ones do exactly, but I did a week or two ago. I went and counted it out and confirmed it's. I think it's. I can't remember if it was 28 to 22.
Oh no, I meant of the toss-up states. Just if we're talking about refusing to certify, okay, so the
Trail. Trump
Republicans
should just.
have like a two-thirds majority in Wisconsin. I'm just looking. Let me just.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty sure they have a majority in Michigan. Yes, they have a majority in Michigan. Because isn't it? Is it the legislator decides on the electors, or is that the governor? I'm not really sure how it works exactly.
The legislature of every state has the final say, period,
And I don't
on
necessarily
sending
trust
electors
any
to.
of the state Republicans, but I mean, there's at least a chance there.
Mhm.
Whereas if they were Democrats, then it would be a 0% chance. Let me see. Nevada. Okay, Nevada.
Well, I mean, it looks to me like it looks to me like Trump is wrangling the party for the most part. Oh, you're cutting out a lot, so I think I'm talking over you.
Oh,
Last.
um, so I'm just sorry. I'm just looking at it. So Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan have Republican majorities in in their state houses. I don't think Nevada does, and Pennsylvania does too. I'm pretty sure.
So that's 4 out of 6
I think
for
Nevada's
Trump
the only
there.
one that doesn't. Uh, the
Five.
Republicans, yeah, the Republicans, I think actually have a 2/3 majority in like Wisconsin. So, I mean, once again, I don't know if that really how much that really matters, but if those were all controlled by the Democrats, then there'd be a 0% chance.
Right.
So
And
yeah, we'll see. Just as I'm looking at this map, remember how long it took for them to call Alaska?
yeah,
Didn't it take like a
you can
full
see it
week?
down there.
Because
Yeah.
Alaska's totally a swing state, guys.
Yeah.
I wonder.
I think. I mean, yeah. They made sure that even though they made sure to never actually give Trump any of his lead.
Mhm.
Um. And yeah. Oh man.
Arizona's close, but the Republicans do have a majority there. Also, the governor's majority is Republican, I think. Um, I don't know. We'll see what happens in Georgia because I'd imagine that the governor is under a lot of pressure from conservatives. Uh,
Yeah.
because aren't they saying they're going to primary challenge him? And like, I think people are pretty pissed off. But honestly, so as somebody says, it doesn't necessarily, and as you pointed out, they just have to cast enough doubt to prevent enough states from certifying or make states decertifying that it goes to the House of Representatives, which I don't think is implausible. I think today, because I thought Pennsylvania was kind of a lost cause, but it looks like they're having success, and we don't really know like even where anything else is going. So I'm not going to give like a percentage chance or anything, but it's I do think it's not over yet. Um,
No, I think it's favored. It's favoring Trump, and it's not even close to over. Um. Yeah. I mean, as we can see from this map, Biden is in a tough spot, and the Republicans definitely are not completely loyal, but I think it's pretty clear that he's wrangled them pretty effectively, and gotten them mostly on board with fighting this fight. Um,
I think
and
I think the biggest
nothing matters until the electors are sent to the electoral
I,
college, right?
I think
That's
I think the biggest white pill was I think it was 76% of Trump voters think he won or something like that, and only three
yeah,
percent think Biden legitimately won.
yeah,
So it's not like it's a fringe thing. It seems like the mainstream of the because I was expecting like maybe just people like you or me would be like, oh, there's election fraud, but it seems like the base. I don't know if I've ever seen them this fired up and this willing to like go to bat.
yeah. I mean, I think this is even bigger than 2016. I mean, again, that's one of the most white pilling things, and I saw this at the rally. Is that the vast majority of people who voted for Trump do not seem to believe that Biden legitimately won the election, and people are tuning out of news networks en masse. You know, they're migrating to other platforms like Parler on their own, without even like, again, like Parler is no longer like this fringe thing. Um, yeah, it's pretty crazy and really good. I think what is happening right now. People are actually. I think Trump is demonstrating this singular will to simply not um, just cave in as the right wing always does to the left, which
Mm-hmm.
is how we got us here in the first place. And I think that singular will is getting even these like swamp creature Republicans to
Like Lindsey
actually
Graham,
get behind him.
who's like the biggest swamp
Um,
creature of them
yeah,
all.
where is he at right now? I saw he did. Yeah, I saw he did some like fist bumping thing with Kamala Harris, or um,
Uh, I don't
I
know.
do.
We'll
Well, I looked into that. Apparently, like the fist bump is just how they shake hands during coronavirus or something. So I don't know. I never make too much of that. But anyway, to the point. Yeah, I mean even the low lifes are resisting passively at best.
mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm pretty confident that Trump will manage to keep the party on his side to a degree to which he will be able to count on the Republican apparatus to get him the votes he needs, one way or the other.
I think also well, I think Q was bullshit. I do think it wound up doing a lot of good because I think it really showed a lot of particularly boomers what the stakes are.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the elite pedophile rings, I mean that's like objectively provable. I mean I think Epstein like alone proves that there is a lot of pedos in the upper class, and so I think it is a positive, even if it's just kind of getting people a bit more aware of that. Because I mean, it goes from it just them thinking it's just another election, it's just solely about the marginal tax rate, into thinking, oh my God, we're led by like these pedo Satanists. So uh, I don't know what's gonna happen. I think to me I forget if it was, I think it was Nick Fuentes was saying, I hadn't really realized it. Trump's doing is actively trying to like do antitrust against a lot of these tech companies. Because I think every people kept telling me he wasn't doing anything about it, but I like find out he actually I think is um, like at least attempting to address the situation. And I think there's also the Ted Cruz redemption arc.
I think it's pretty obvious that Ted Cruz has been tasked with dealing with this to some
Mm-hmm.
extent. He always has the best questions at the hearings, and I know we get tired of the hearings, but I did watch the last one, and
Or he like tweeted.
I don't remember if he tweeted, but I remember Ted Cruz said just straight up that Twitter was a publishing platform based on their little notifications they're putting up on everything now, right? So I think maybe what may have been going on there is he's been waiting for them to take publication actions so severe that there's simply no way they can avoid the antitrust laws. I think their Twitter, etc., is basically depending on him not getting in. Um, but I'm hoping somewhere between hoping and expecting that in the second term, um, this stuff is actually going to be brought against Twitter and these other platforms for real. That might be a bit more of a hope than a reasonable expectation, but we'll see what happens.
Because
But yeah, he certainly hasn't done nothing, right? But you have to remember, like he can't just go in and lock up Clinton and just rip apart these companies. He has to he has to build up the political capital to actually do that, right? And I think what's happening now is the perfect event for him to actually build up the capital necessary to really take it to these people. Um, think about this: if he actually succeeds in taking on the Democratic Party machine here, um, he's certainly capable of taking on Twitter. I mean,
well, it's what was I going to say again? Unless I think during the last one of the hearings, Ted Cruz is like, okay, well, what if I post this story about an actual conviction for electoral fraud in Texas from 3 weeks ago? Will that be flagged? He's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, I'm just gonna post it now and we'll see. I think he did, like, he took out his phone and did it or something. So, I mean, to be fair, I never really got why people hated Ted Cruz so much, other than the fact that he just ran against Trump. Because, like, I supported Cruz before Trump, like, became a big thing. I think Trump should name Cruz to the Supreme Court. That's going to be my. I think if he gets one more pick, can you imagine how awesome Ted Cruz on the Supreme Court would be?
That would that would be the best redemption arc in all of anime history, basically.
I don't know if he really
Um,
needs that much of a redemption arc. 'Cause I think he's pretty solidly been like one of the most conservative senators. Um,
yeah, it's just he was the arch enemy during the primaries, so he kind of ended up in that position.
yeah, like because a lot of people said he was like a rhino because I guess he had his alliance sort of with Kasich, who is was kind of a rhino. But I don't know. I think even if I would have preferred if Trump had have just won outright and we weren't having to deal with this. But I think if Trump is going to lose, this is probably the best case scenario for him to lose. Um, because I think regardless of what happens, I don't know. Serb thinks liberal democracy is just kind of over at this point. Um,
Yeah, clearly. I mean, he's 100% right.
because like I think like it doesn't matter what happens. A large proportion of the country is just not going to believe that this was real. If Trump wins, the Democrats aren't going to believe it's real. If Biden gets inaugurated, the Republicans are going to win. Even if like I don't know, it's just there's so much shade cast that even if your guy winds up winning, it's still kind of the whole process is just delegitimized and it just becomes like a massive shit show. Um, so I mean I think that's good. I do think though if Trump loses this, I doubt the Republicans will ever win a presidential election again. Um,
Uh, I think, I mean, they can always shift their party, um, but it wouldn't be the
I,
same.
I just mean I don't mean from like an ideological. I mean from like a because if the Democrats get away with this level of voter fraud,
Mm.
um, regardless of what position the Republicans take, I just mean from a pure partisan perspective. I'm not
Yeah,
really.
I think they understand that. I
Yeah.
think they understand that to a degree, and that's why Trump is able to wrangle them, right? Because he can actually like rely on their self-interest to some extent. Because there's no way you can be a Republican at this point and not realize that if they get away with this, you're just screwed, right? You might win elections, but you're literally at the mercy of the Democrats in terms of which elections you win. And like I don't see how any party apparatus can tolerate conditions like that, right? Where their opponent just gets to decide by fiat, which elections they win. That's just obviously unacceptable, right?
My hope is even like the people who don't like Trump, who are just motivated purely by their self political interest, um, will be like, yeah, we got to stop this just because if they steal it this blatantly, then I think kind of yeah. I mean, I'm more optimistic than I was a week ago, but I think we just kind of have to just stand strong, keep fighting, and I guess trust the plan because nobody really knows what's happening from one day to the next because there's just so much not just from their side but even from our side like people there's a lot of right-wing fake like just because the media calls everything we use from our side um because there is but
Hmm. All right, now you totally cut out for me.
oh did I cut out for people on the street? Oh, I was just saying that we just need to stay strong and just keep going because like no one knows what the hell's going on from one day to the next. And there's, like, I was just saying, there is a lot of fake news on our side. I'm not gonna, like, there is actually, um, like, people who just post stuff that's not real. So I think we just kind of have to trust the plan, more or less, and just keep fighting.
Yeah, and I think to that point, like people get a little too focused on the whole Kraken Sidney Powell thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely important, right? I mean, this whole electronic voter fraud Dominion thing. I mean, it's not all just QTR stuff, right? I mean, there's definitely some stuff that needs to be investigated in terms of how our electronic voting systems are working. But the key case, just focus on the Giuliani stuff and not the Powell stuff. I mean, it's actually perfectly fine if
Sorry, man, you're cutting out there. I think. Wow, that's some bad lag.
necessarily Powell's case. Now Powell's case can definitely help, but that is a sideshow to the main thing. And like, no matter how like blown out she gets, um, as long as Giuliani's in the game, then we're still good. Um,
Well, like, I don't know. Her thing will probably take a lot of subpoenas and take, like,
yeah,
that might take years to prove. I mean, nothing she really said seemed to be, like, surprising. I mean, that there's voting machines, that they have links. Like, isn't the Venezuela thing pretty easy to prove? Like, I don't think that's even, like, a conspiracy. Like, could you just look up, like, who owns the company? Um, it's funny because I remember when the ballots were dumped, I had been reading a while previously about the election they had in Venezuela, the last one. So actually, it's kind of funny because this is like the most banana Republic tier shit I've ever heard. So the opposition overwhelmingly won in their National Assembly elections. So the government set up another National Assembly called the Constituent Assembly and gave it all the power. And then they had an election and the government won every seat in it. And apparently 3 million votes came in the last 20 minutes of the election. And that just kind of it kind of reminded me of this. And then it's funny that that wound up happening. And I don't even really know what this thing was today with like the CIA or whatever that thing is that Trump retweeted.
yeah. I mean, it looks. I think that's mostly like a Boomer Appeal article. If you just look at it, I mean, it's got a lot of crazy graphics in there and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and just like a lot of bold claims. But I mean, if you read the article, it literally says that the CIA, FBI, and Department of Justice are treasonous, and that Trump has special forces on standby as a deterrent. And the president retweeted that. So what does that mean? I mean, again, it's like you said, we don't really know what's going on, but I think if you just looked at that article by itself, it looks insane. But Trump put it out there, right? What does that mean? I don't know, but it's interesting. I mean, at the very least, like I said, like I looked at the article, and when I was reading it, the hairs were standing up on the back of my neck because the president is literally sharing an article that says uh CIA is treasonous. I mean, what am I supposed to think of that, right? I mean,
The
I don't know.
I don't know. The theory I heard was that Q was the mid-level person in the NSA, and that the NSA is less anti-Trump than the other. I don't know if that's true. I just thought that was an interesting theory I heard.
Um, I mean, since the NSA is probably going to be more composed of computer engineering type people and people who just kind of have to deal with reality, I would expect they would be. Uh, like once you see enough statistics, you kind of have to become right wing. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Or just
maybe so.
less than the. I mean, I miss when the CIA used to just kill communists in Latin America. The good old days. But yeah, I think that's probably pretty good. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Um, I guess one of the most interesting things about the Million MAGA March was just the conversations we had after. having the kind of talks we would on a stream or on like a Discord chat, just in person, for a few hours, and like that was really cool. And we shouldn't underestimate the importance of actually like having events like this where we can just sort of come together and actually just talk to each other and sort of reinforce the fact that we're not alone or crazy. I think that was pretty important actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I'm sure there are dozens or hundreds of other groups of people doing the same thing after the main event, right?
Mhm. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on, man. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but I think we covered a lot of ground in this stream. Um, there's just so much stuff going on. I kind of wanted to get someone else on who's kind of been following this and try to like, as Trump said with the Islamic immigration, figure out what the hell's going on.
Yep. Well, as I said like on Twitter a few days ago, I mean, none of us are really going to know what's going on. We're not going to be shown the evidence, right? This is going to be decided in court. It's going to be decided by elites and not us plebeians, and we can do nothing, or we can pick a side, or we can counter signal. I mean, I'm just going to pick the side that is against the internationalist takeover of the planet, as
It's
far as I can
against
tell.
George
And
Soros and the
yeah,
banks and like the lowest scum.
yeah, and I guess I'll say too, like I basically decided on a whim, on instinct, really, to just go to these events and just go to the events. I mean, if you're in Arizona, they're doing one this weekend. Go to the Capitol, even if you're near. You'll probably have a great time flying or driving there from far away. I mean, Fuentes is going to be there. It'll be a blast. They're fun. I mean, these rallies are a ton of fun, and just if you're even thinking about going, don't even hesitate. Just do it. It's totally worth going to these things, and I'm looking forward to more. So, but yeah, we covered a lot of good ground here, I think, and I would just say don't get demoralized. There is no reason to be demoralized yet, or to let anyone else demoralize you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks, man. Pleasure having you on. God bless.
Yep. God bless. Always good to talk.
Okay, everybody. So, good. Definitely check out Charlemagne's channel. Let me just, if I'm not gonna boomer it up for a minute, let me just post a link to his channel, and also follow him on Twitter. And I finally started to use Twitter. I need to put a link to my Twitter because I've actually started to use it a fair amount. I kind of went back on my whole not using Twitter because I used to not use Twitter or whatever. But let me just. So if you want to follow me, um, there's my Twitter. And I'll post a link to Charlemagne's channel. I'll just post it in the description of this.